Hey everyone, I wanted to show you my deck that I've been using in cue cards. I've called it Space Deck because originally it had predominantly space cards. And it still has quite a few space cards, but it's got a lot of other cards now as well. So the base of the deck, obviously space. So I have some pretty standard space cards like Mars, Hubble Space Telescope, if we take a look at some of these cards, you can see Hubble Space Telescope, for example, when played, gain +4 power per turn until the end of the game. So you can imagine that you're probably going to be playing every single card 3 or 2 times. Very rarely will you play it more than 3 times. I think there is a possibility you can play a card 4 times if you play it on the first turn of the first round. Then it might be able to cycle through and you might be able to play it again, but if you average it at 2.5 times that you're going to be playing each card, that's how I've based my deck. I will be able to play this card 2.5 times. So if we imagine that it's got 5 energy, which it does, 40 base power, then it's also going to gain me 10 power per turn by the end of the game, and at halfway through the match it's going to have 5 power per turn. After the first round it's only going to have 2 power per turn for me. So over the course of a 9-round game, I've got 27 rounds. If I have 2 power per turn for the final 4 rounds, and that's going to be 24 additional power. Obviously it's got an opportunity to give me more than that, but if we work on averages, then during the first round I've on average played it 0.5 times, 2 power per turn, going to give me an additional 24 power per turn minimum. So it's actually 5 energy, 40 base power, but also 24 power on top of that 40 power for a total of 64 power. And that's what I've aimed for in this deck, is energy times by 10. That's what I want the minimum cards to be. So if you have a 1 energy card, it needs to have a greater than 10 power. If you have a 5 energy card like this, it needs to have greater than 50 power for the match. For a card like ACKEE and SALTFISH, if you take the same formula of you're going to be playing this card 2.5 times every single match, for the first turn you play it, it's going to have no power. For the second turn you're going to play it, it's going to have 70 power. And from the third turn you play it, it's going to have 140 power. But because you only play it on average 2.5 times, it's only going to have 70 power approximately for the half a turn that you play it, for the 2.5 times played. So for the match it's going to be 10 energy with 140 power, which is much higher than the times by 10 rule. Some of the cards I've put into my deck are what I like to call tech cards. So if we look at Bulletant, for example, because this week we have a bug bonus, you get an additional 70 power when you play bug cards. So Bulletant gets an additional 70 power bonus. So when played on that board, I will be playing a 7 energy card with 130 power, which obviously is very strong. In addition to that, if I lost a round when I've played this card, my opponent will lose minus 30 power. So again, you could look at it as 7 energy, 90 net power, although if you imagine you and your opponent are even, you only get an additional 15 power for your net power. So 7 energy, 75 power, but with the option of having it on the board with a bonus of 70. So in my mind, this card is 7 energy, 60 base power, plus 15 approximately for being just as good as your opponent, so that's 75 power. Then you've got the plus 70 power split across 5 rounds, because obviously the bug board is only once every 5 rounds. So 70 divided by 5 is 14. So you add the 14 onto your 75 to get 89 for 7 energy, 89 power. One of the recent cards I picked up is Dead Drops. When drawn, give a random card in your hand plus 50 power and give this card minus 50 power this turn. What I didn't realise with this card is it can actually give itself 50 power and then take 50 power away again in the same turn. Dead Drops is quite a good card to close out a round and draw it on the last turn of a round. You can give one of your lower cost cards plus 50 power, like Thick-Headed Fly for example, which means that you might have the advantage going into that turn and you might be able to close out the round. But also, if you didn't play Dead Drops, then you don't have the negative 50 power detriment. So when the turn ends, you've gained 50 power effectively for just drawing this card, and then the next turn you can play this for 7 energy, 70 damage, no problem. On top of that, it's also part of the espionage set, so we get that plus 70 espionage bonus on that board. So I really like this card. That was a quick overview of this deck. If you want to use this deck, feel free to pause the video and have a look. Its variations of this deck have led me to get to rank 1 Dragon. There's a little bit of strategizing when you need to play different cards and reacting to your opponent. For example, Mako Shark is a reactionary card when your opponent plays an Ocean and Seas card. And yeah, very good deck.